Lincoln's first reaction to the news of Gettysburg was, "Good, now let's finish the job." And there was every reason to expect that the job could be finished. It was not only Lincoln who was talking about finishing the job. Ordinary soldiers in the Army of the Potomac could see the devastation and havoc that had been wrought in the Confederate Army by Gettysburg. And even the men in the ranks, who were not always the ones to first jump up and down and say, "Yes, let's have a battle," now they were saying, "Let's get this war over with. Let's close in for the kill. Let's finish off the Army of Northern Virginia. We have them where we want them to be." It was made even more acute by the fact that after the Battle of Gettysburg, down came the rains, the Potomac River flooded. That meant that as Lee retreated, he backed up against his crossings at Williamsport, Maryland, and had nowhere to go. He could not get across the river. So with a badly battered, sadly depleted army, with victory inspiring the Army of the Potomac, with the Federals being able to call in reinforcements, especially Northern militia, all right, maybe not terribly reliable, but at least they could do a lot of the pickup jobs for veterans that would put Army of the Potomac veterans on the battle line. All of that made it seem abundantly clear that the golden opportunity to complete the war was right at hand. And Meade did not do it. Meade's pursuit of Lee is jerking and unresponsive. And even when he finally catches up to Lee at Williamsport, his behavior is circumspect, cautious. And even when he's about finally worked up to the point when he's going to give the order to attack and finds that the Army of the Potomac is looking at empty trenches because the Army of Northern Virginia has finally managed to cross the river in the night, Meade has to send that message to Lincoln, and Lincoln is devastated. Lincoln had already been getting anxious about the slowness of Meade's pursuit. He knew that Meade politically was coming from a very different angle than himself. And he was anxious that the history of the Army of the Potomac under generals like McClellan, and Meade, remember, was a friend of McClellan's, had never been terribly overeager. Putting all that together, Lincoln had gotten much more anxious as time went by. And when Meade finally cornered Lee at Williamsport, Lincoln even went to the point of sending a personal ambassador to Meade. In this case, his vice president, Hannibal Hamlin, and the chair of the Senate Military Affairs Committee, Senator Henry Wilson. And the message that he sent with Hamlin to Meade was this: attack. If you are successful, you get all the credit. If the attack is a failure, I will take all the blame. But attack. And Meade doesn't do it. And when Meade sends word to Lincoln that Lee, in fact, has escaped across the Potomac, well, Robert Todd Lincoln told this best of all. Robert Todd Lincoln was home from Harvard. And on the morning when Lincoln got the message about Lee's escape, Robert went into his father's office, and there he found his father head down on his desk, weeping in frustration and despair. And Abraham Lincoln said to his eldest son, "We had them in the palm of our hands. We had only to close our fingers, and they were ours. And the war would be over." In anger, he turns to his Secretary of the Navy and he says, "There is bad faith somewhere. There is bad faith. What does it mean, Mr. Wells? Great God, what does it mean? Is this McClellan all over again? McClellan deliberately dragging his heels for political reasons? McClellan trying to offer Lee a safe conduct back across the river so that they can continue to talk about the possibility of a negotiated peace?" Lincoln writes a letter to Meade full of fury and disappointment. And then he reflects upon the fact that at least Meade won a victory, that if he pursues Meade, no one in the North is going to understand it. Why would the president find so much fault with the victor of Gettysburg? With all that in mind, Lincoln folds up the letter, never sends it, scrawls on it, never sent or signed. Meade, of course, finds out about this. He hears this through channels, and especially through the General-in-Chief of the Army, Henry Halleck. Meade immediately flies up in rage, offers his resignation. And Lincoln, instead now of prodding Meade to more deliberate action, Lincoln has to write a letter calming him down, almost apologizing. What a state of affairs. But Lincoln would continue to say afterwards for months, we had them in the palm of our hands. We could have ended the war right there at Williamsport, back up against the Potomac. But it didn't happen. And the war would go on for almost another 2 years. And there would be death and destruction and maiming. There would be heartbreak. There would be loss. And all that would go on, and Lincoln would always remember, this did not have to be. And the figure that he would always come back to pin it upon was George Gordon Meade.